Nairobi-listed company Centum Investments has acquired a 100% acre piece of land on which it intends to build what it calls a diplomatic hub for foreign missions willing to relocate to posh Nairobi suburb. Centum Chief Executive Officer is James Mworia, and he said that the company is looking for both local and foreign investors to provide funds for the development that could later be listed at the stock exchange under the Real Estate Investment Trust. He joins me now. Thanks so much, Mr. Mworia, for your time. Let's start off with the fact that recent headlines have been dominated by the fact that Centum has added 2 new subsidiaries to its portfolio in Mauritius. What's all the restructuring that's going on at the company?
No, we've had to reorganize the manner in which we hold our assets so as to be able to attract other investors. Mauritius is a friendly jurisdiction for investors, and the Mauritius entity is the holding vehicle for our investments in real estate in Uganda, especially, and also in Kenya.
Now, going to Mauritius, some people would say it's obviously the favorable tax regime. Is it simply an issue of just getting better tax rates and also ensuring that you can benefit from double taxation agreements, or are there other benefits to doing business from Mauritius?
I think, yeah, you've mentioned a few of them that are important to investors in this country. As you're aware, Kenya does not yet have double tax treaties with its neighboring countries. And therefore, as an investor in Kenya, investing in the other East African countries, you're exposed to double taxation. But aside for that, Mauritius is a jurisdiction that is well understood by international investors. And therefore, it's important to domicile that particular holding company in that particular jurisdiction that is well understood.
Well, currently, your portfolio of investments has 18% of the interest being outside of Kenya. You're looking to grow that to about 50%. Talk to us about that strategy.
Yes, our strategy is to be a Pan-African investment company, and that's a strategy we came up with in 2009. And to expand our footprint from outside Kenya to the rest of sub-Saharan Africa. And we are doing that in real estate, we're doing that in our marketable securities business and in our private equity business. And that's part of the reason why it has been necessary for us to incorporate a vehicle in Mauritius to help us to use as a conduit to make those investments in those other countries. As you're aware, investors are now looking at Africa not as one country, but really as a regional opportunity. And we need to be able to offer investors a one-stop shop where they can then access sub-Saharan Africa risk and return through one vehicle.
Anybody looking at Centum could sum it up into 3 components: real estate, as you've mentioned, private equity and financial services. But it seems as though the weighting is skewed very much towards private equity going forward. Explain that particular emphasis to us.
Thank you. Our emphasis is to provide access to inaccessible investment opportunities, and we made a deliberate decision to have a great weighting on assets that do not have a public market. Our target exposure to private equity and real estate, and generally assets that are not publicly listed, is anywhere between 70% and 80%. It would obviously not make much sense for us to take shareholders' money and then invest it in the public markets, particularly in securities that they could get the exposure themselves. So our focus is on private equity and real estate and infrastructure, because our investors do not have a mechanism to access those particular opportunities, and in addition, by holding a Centum share, they then have liquid access to private equity and to real estate, which are generally liquid asset classes.
Let's talk about private equity, because it's aroused a lot of investor interest abroad, and we're starting to see a lot more money flowing through private equity funds. But many of them are looking at mining and resources. You've gone into non-traditional investment areas. You've invested in areas like beverage production, education, and, like I said, financial services. Is that going to continue to be your modus operandi?
Yeah, very much so. Our investment thesis is on backing consumer-oriented companies that are fulfilling the needs for basic goods and services. And so we are not within the region. And companies that meet that criteria, our investments in beverages, financial services companies, we're invested in publishing companies, in manufacturing companies. We are now looking at going into real estate. We are looking at addressing the needs of a growing middle class and a growing economy in sub-Saharan Africa. And I would believe that's an area that is probably not adequately addressed.
Absolutely, there's the rise of the African consumer, but the African consumer at the moment is bucking under the pressure of imported inflation and just some of the challenges we're seeing internationally. Just from where you're operating in East Africa, not only have we seen inflation really hitting the markets hard, but it's also created a situation where the shillings within the East African community have depreciated. So as a strategy to expand into the rest of the continent at this point in time, what's your plan to mitigate against some of these risks?
I think, investing, we've been in this business for the last 44 years. Centum is 44 years today. We intend to stay in the continent for the long term. We see these challenges as short-term challenges. We actually see them as opportunities to acquire entities and to make investments at this particular point in time. But you also need to remember that we are focusing on a market for very basic goods and services. We are not in the market of selling luxurious items, and these are some of the last items that consumers cut from their shopping list. We've had similar shocks before, and our portfolio has continued to perform very well in spite of the shocks.
All right, well, we wish you well, and thanks so much for your time, James Mworia, who is the CEO of Centum Investments.